Good evening, everyone. Andy Moss here, tradingadventures.com, with a quick recap of the day's action. And what a Monday. Second Monday in a row, we've had a large gap down followed by a really substantial rally. Last week, it was the DeepSeek news rattling the AI trade. And today, it is a continuation of the late Friday sell-off on Trump's comments about the imposition of tariffs on specifically on Canada and Mexico. And so the markets were down steeply when the future session opened yesterday evening at 6 o'clock. And this morning we came in, if you saw the morning update video, we were looking at S&P futures. Here's the S&P 500 E-mini futures up in this upper left panel. And we were watching this kind of pivot area, potential resistance here. And up until about 9:30, around 10 o'clock, maybe just before 10 o'clock, things were still looking pretty weak. And then news hit that Trump had a friendly telephone call with the president of Mexico, and tariffs were going to be delayed by 1 month. That came along with a commitment from Mexico that they would send some troops to the border to help with the curb the drug traffic and illegal crossings and so forth. And so just like that, stocks started going up. I had posted a chart earlier in the day. Let me switch over to the SPY. And this pink line here on the 30-minute chart is the year-to-date anchored VWAP for SPY. And it had come close to that and retreated and then was back up in this area before that phone call. And boom, there you can see how it shot up for the rest of the day there. So we'll come back to that in just a few minutes. Before we do, let's go through the rest of the futures roadmap. Again, if you see this in the mornings, I post it almost every day. I call this the roadmap. We're trying to see what the short to intermediate trend is in the stock index futures contracts. And so again, S&P 500 E-mini futures, nice rebound today, back over the, well, first they went back over the week to date, the new week to date anchored VWAP. Then the pink line is the year to date anchored VWAP, and it's above the pivot. Didn't quite close the gap here. So when you see the red and green shaded areas on these charts, that indicates a gap open, which is simply a disconnect between the opening price and the previous closing price. So didn't quite fill the gap and didn't quite get to the basically flat 5-day moving average on the E-mini futures. Over here on the NASDAQ 100 E-mini futures, you can see kind of the same story. Just barely missed closing the gap and bumping up against this slightly rising 5-day moving average here. So this is going to be an area we want to watch going into tomorrow and for the rest of the week. I'll switch over to the ETF versions of this chart in just a minute so you have some more relatable price points. But down here, we've got the Russell 2000. Year-to-date anchored VWAP here is kind of keeping a lid on things along with help from this pivot area. And then the Dow futures did actually close the gap, came back a little bit and chopping around here a little bit. Looks like they probably want to make a run at the 5-day moving average as well. So let's look at the ETF version. Same chart. This is the SPY, QQQ, IWM, and DIA. The price points you're probably more familiar with, and the time frame is a 65-minute chart instead of a 1-hour time frame, though. So again, I post one of the other of these charts about every morning. I do use them interchangeably, and the price action is basically the same, though the price points are a little different. So SPY post-market 599.27. You can see the 5-day moving average up here at 602.90, so very close by there. This anchored VWAP I didn't have on the other. This is from the January 13th low, and this came into play a little bit. You see it traded around either side of that. It was almost perfect resistance here on the IWM and sent things back down to test this. Again, it's a little crowded down here, but the pink line is the year-to-date anchored VWAP. The purple line is the week-to-date anchored VWAP, and then this is that pivot low, and then the blue line, of course, the declining 5-day moving average here. So IWM still in a bit of a chop area, mostly sideways. All of these indicators are basically flat, so we don't have a real resolution there. This is a nice bounce off of the gap down this morning. However, no real resolution or directional change yet. And we could probably say the same thing for most of these. These lines are basically flat, with maybe the exception of the new week-to-date anchored VWAP, which is expected after such a steep rise today from those morning lows. Qs over here, 520 after hours, and the VWAPs all in this range here from 517 to 518, and the 5-day moving average up here at 521.77. So still some congestion. Again, nice bounce, no real resolution. We'll have to see. Last week, the bounce came up, it came back a little bit, and then we rose pretty solidly throughout the rest of the week. Do we get that again? Who knows? It's a very similar week. We've got some economic data. We've got a lot of earnings reports coming up, and we just had Palantir after the close. They announced really good results. I'll just show you. Here's Palantir. Here's where the report came out. Boom, 83 up to 97, and who knows? Maybe it wants to hit that $100 mark up here. The results are being very well received. Back to the topic at hand. Here's the Dow ETF. Bounced perfectly off of this pivot low anchored VWAP here. Okay, let's shift over to the daily charts now, which are, of course, always included in the bi-weekly market updates. Here's SPY on a daily. I've added some pivot notations on the chart here by request. Had a couple people looking at this. I typically add the dotted lines with or without a price label, indicate pivot areas that I'm watching. This is an automated feature that I just added on TradingView just to kind of give some reference points along the way if you're interested in that kind of thing. So here's the 575.35 pivot from January 13th. We were looking at that anchored VWAP on the smaller time frame chart. Let me just add that here. So the nice bounce from the morning lows, we're back up through this pivot low from last Monday and above the 21-day moving average. That's the blue line here, and closed right here with the 50-day and that pivot low anchored VWAP. Our closing price, $597.77, and those are all within, less than $1 of that, the 50-day and the January 13th anchored VWAP there. So I've said it again. I'm getting repetitive here. Nice bounce, not a real resolution yet. So we want to see the 8-day is still up here around 603. We've still got this pivot high up here at 609.07, and this all-time closing high was 609.75, just a little bit above that. So what do we do tomorrow? Can we go on up and test the 8-day or maybe get back to the underside of this trend line? Or do we need to come back down and maybe hit Monday's pivot low? We've got a new pivot here at 590.49. Just show you here, when I add this line here, you can see the dotted line shows up and it gets a price label over here in the scale. 590.49 is today's pivot low, and the 100-day is next below there at 586.99. So that's a lot of numbers. I'm not going to go through as many numbers on the next chart. You get the idea, but these are the indicators and the level that we want to watch for clues going forward through the rest of the week. Qs, same thing, 21-day and 50-day moving average right here above today's closing price. Let's add the orange anchored VWAP from that low, add another layer there. That's going to be pretty significant resistance there around 518, or at least it was for today. See if that continues on through the rest of the week, or do we get on above it and get back up to test these areas? Again, look at your indicators. Here's the labels over here in the price scale. Let me know if you have any questions about that. I'm happy to answer an email or a note if you are unclear how to read that chart. I do want to make this brief and efficient without droning on about each individual level. IWM came back up to test the 21-day, the 100-day in green here, and kind of tried to get back into this sloppy range. Couldn't close there. So back below here, we've got the 200-day and a pivot area down here around 216, 217, and some potential resistance up here at the 100-day, 225 and 226, the pivot 227, 8-day moving average there. We'll hit a couple more charts here. The DIA, Dow Jones 30, continues to be a leader. It got really the strongest bounce back above this pivot. Looking at the 8-day, financials have been strong, so we'll see how the Dow shapes up for the rest of the week and look for continued leadership there. Another chart I pointed out this morning was the dollar. That's something we watch very closely for its relationship with stocks. Usually an inverse relationship, not always. but it's that headwind, tailwind story. And as the dollar was going up on the tariff news, stocks were going down. So it gave the corresponding move lower to test its 21-day moving average from above. Many stock indices were going and testing that level from below. The dollar coming back down to test it from above as looking for potential support. And so you can see those two factors kind of coming together here. And again, we don't have a resolution. This is a choppy market, chopping and coming kind of back into equilibrium, if you will. TLT, Treasury bonds, they were looking pretty good this morning, holding up, really kind of better than everything else. They came back and sold off a little bit. Not the end of the world. It's holding the 8-day. Can't quite get a close over this pivot, and still looking at the 50-day here, but bonds continue to try to improve their situation. And last but not least, Bitcoin with just really an amazing recovery. This was down all the way into the 91,000 today. 91,178 and 1 penny is the low of the day on my chart. Look at the volume. It is about twice the 20-day average, and a move from low 91,000s back up to test the 21-day moving average around 102, a little over $102,000. It's 101,460 right now. You can see that over here, and just really an incredible turnaround there for Bitcoin on the day. We look at the weekly chart, which I've been posting every weekend, watching this pattern play out again. Last May through August and October, we had a consolidation period. It's moving up. Same thing again this year. It's moving up. This one led to another intermediate consolidation here in January and early February. Same thing happening again here. It's made a couple of attempts and couldn't go, but if and when it does get and stay above this, call it 108, 109 area, that's $108,000 to $109,000 per Bitcoin, then we could be well on the way to this next Fibonacci extension level. That is one possible target on a move higher, followed by the measured move, which could take it up to near 180,000. So maybe that comes later on in the year. So once again, it's going to be another busy week. It feels like it already has been here one day in. The calendar, we just had Palantir. We'll take another check of the chart. NXPI also reported this evening. Tomorrow evening are a couple of big names: Google, AMD, Amgen. On Wednesday, we've got Qualcomm, ARM, and MSTR. Thursday is Amazon, and Friday is non-farm payrolls. So not to mention JOLTS tomorrow, ADP employment on Wednesday, jobless claims on Thursday, as well as some Fed speakers and other news sprinkled in there. So, again, a little more volatility, a little more chop, a little more uncertainty has been a theme for the year, and that doesn't show any sign of slowing down here into February, which is, by the way, check out, if you haven't, I'm sure you have, because I refer to their work all the time, Jeffrey Hirsch, Almanac Trader, Ryan Dietrich, a couple of whizzes with the stats. They will show you that February in a post-election year is typically a weaker, choppier month. So maybe keep our expectations tempered there a little bit. I will keep this information coming and these charts coming. We'll watch these potential support and resistance levels along the way, see how stocks shake out for the rest of the week. Hope you have a great evening. Thanks for watching. There's your market update from me, Andrew Moss, Chartered Market Technician. A couple resources to help you keep up to date throughout the week. Go to trading-adventures.com. Enter your email to subscribe for free. Also, be sure and follow me on X/Twitter. Search for Andrew Moss CMT and look for the blue check mark. Finally, get real-time options trading alerts from Epic Trades. Go to t3live.com/ET for all the details.